Hold on, y'all. I need to stretch a little bit. I feel like one of those Class B villains where when they make their grand entrance, why they swing the chair. So like. What's up, everybody? This is Artist TDJ here on the YouTube channel, and today I get to show you guys how to color like a pro. This is going to be a series of tutorials for all you colorists out there, covering different topics and what are the key things to look for as a colorist. And so for today, we're just going to go over two main tools that I use in Photoshop. It's the Lasso tool and the Airbrush tool. And this is for any colorist out there, whether you're an amateur or you're in the beginning phase, intermediate. You may be a pro at this point, but you lost your touch. So this is a good way for you. Wait, hold on. Is that Brian? Shout out, hold on, Brian Lambert. I see you watching on this video. Shout out to Brian Lambert over at Winless Comics. He started his coloring journey over a year ago or two, and he's on a good track. But today, sir, today's the day and the moment where you're going to soak in my knowledge from the maestro himself so that you can perfect your own craft. And one day, you're going to be a one-man band on your own comic books. That probably never happened. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into my tablet.
All right, so we are here in Photoshop, working on one of the pages from the book I'm working on, which is Dark Journey, issue 1, produced by Northern Wind Comics. And in this page, this is a full screen page where we see this fourth guardian warning the protagonist's wife down below the dangers and all the stuff that's happening in her forest, all the darkness, the shadows, the monsters that the antagonist is bringing. So she is warning the wife to go let her husband know, which in case is the ranger, the protagonist, to go and wake up and stop these threats from further happening before they ruin and plunge her domain, her forest. So in this character, so you can see I'm rendering her body, her skin. And so as we progress through this page, I want to talk about some of the key topics when it comes to approaching this piece as a colorist. The first topic I want to go over is forms, break it into simple shapes. So a lot of times when you see artists and illustrations, when they start creating their characters or building an environment, they always start with simple shapes. So they get the foundation going, and then once the foundation is built, then they go ahead and start adding more detail that they can add into their drawings, so that they can further refine it. So same way with you can take those same techniques to this page for colorists. So as you can see, when I'm working on the arm, I imagine the arm as a simple, cylinder, because I know that as the way the skin works is that it's very reflective, and it's not just like one flat shape. It's a volumetric shape, so it's like a cylinder. So as the light is being reflected on the arm, it hits one side of the body, and then there's that little midway point to where the light stops hitting, and then the rest of the body is under the shadows. So I always start with that simple shape. So when I select the shape, I start with that phase 1, and then to go into the smaller details, I will go and create smaller shapes that formulate the highlights. So as for the skin, I probably make these like long, these little white strokes, and start adding more detail and make it light, and then make it brighter, add more highlights there. So it's all about knowing how to break the form and to create those simple shapes. Start simple, and then work your way into the smaller details. The second thing I want to go over is learning how to use references. Now this is very crucial, and I want to speak to every artist out there that's listening to this tutorial. Artists, never be afraid to use reference. And I'm serious. This is very crucial, that we must learn how to use reference at anything. We can't always just replicate things in our head, because unless you sketch that, sketch it a million times, and you know how the body works, how light reflects on certain surfaces, or unless you have a photographic memory, don't be ashamed to use reference. And it's very sad too, because I've heard a lot of crazy feedback and ideas from people that have been taught in art schools, art academy, even in elementary schools, that that people shame those that use reference, that you can't use reference on a regular basis when you're trying to reference something and try to put it into screen. So here's my philosophy on how reference works. We, as artists, illustrators, animators, those are in the creative world, we're trying to imitate life with our arts. How can we simply, create our characters if we don't know how the body is built? How can we create, cities and skyscrapers if we don't know what they look like? How can we draw, fantasies and art and animals and whatever the substance are if we don't use a reference, if we have no idea how it's formulated and how light works? Like, this is why it's very important that reference is a guide to where we need to basically elevate our skills. So for instance, in this page, as I'm drawing this character or trying to render the skin, this right here is an example of why I use reference. I have reference on the side, I have it on my second monitor, so as I'm drawing the different pieces on the arm and doing the highlights, I'm actually looking at reference. I'm trying to see how light works, reflects on skin. And because I don't know from the top of my head, I know, skin is very reflective and it takes a lot. It takes all the specular and, reflectivity, but I don't know how, I don't know all this stuff. So that's why I always look up some images and references so I know what's the shape of the highlights and how do I, replicate the look so it doesn't look like anything different other than skin. Every professional artist that I know, those that work in Marvel, those that work in DC independently, they use reference for their illustrations as well. So if they're using reference, why shouldn't you? So along with finding references online, there's tons of different websites to choose from to find your stock images and references. Obviously Google Images is there as well. But one cool website that I think everyone should try, and I recommend this to everybody, is Pinterest. Oh my God, Pinterest is a lifesaver. And what's so unique about it is that there's just images of everything you could think of. If you're trying to find images for high tech or cyberpunk, fantasy, horror, everything's in Pinterest. And what's cool about it too is that you can save those images and turn it into a library of collections. So like for instance, for my Pinterest, I have one for portraits, I have one for tutorials, I have one for urban type of environments, I got one for elements like water, air, fire, wind. So I just recommend this to every artist out there. Pinterest is completely free. Make it a account and start saving your images and use them for next illustrations. So I recommend it. All right, the last topic I'm gonna go over is learning how to light your characters. So there's like 3 or 4 different types of lights that I think colorists should know. And there's a key light, there's a fill light, there's an ambient light, and then there's a rim light. So key light is your main light source. So imagine you have a character, and let's say you want the main light source to be from, let's say the sun was the main light source. So you would have the main light source hit on the surface, and that would be your main light. Then you have your fill light, which is light that you will fill on the shadows. So wherever the light is on one side, the shadows is on the opposite side. And typically, photographers use a fill light to basically brighten up the shadows, because a lot of times when you're doing photography and you're just working on one light, then like on one face, the other side of the face is too dark, and you need to find a way to kind of like brighten it up. So that's why they use a second light, a fill light, on the opposite side, so that the shadows don't look so highly contrasted, so dark. Which of course I don't think you might need that in for a colorist, but just a nice, a cool way for those that are interested in learning how to light. So there's the key light, there's a fill light. Ambient light is just environment light, and that one we use for, like, let's say for instance, skin. Skin reflects on every type of light. So the way the light works is that light hits on one surface and then it bounces on different surfaces. So eventually you get light on all the surfaces, and that's how we also get environmental light. So environmental light is atmosphere light that reflects on a surface. For skin, because skin is very reflective, so it's sometimes when you look at your skin, it tends to keep track of like the colors from your shirt colors from the ground. You see hints of that. So that's typically your ambient light. Then the last one, we have a rim light. A rim light is used for to separate the subject from the background. It's a really neat trick that photographers use to separate it, so that like for instance, if a character was in a dark background and you have just the lights, in order for you to distinguish the subject, they would put a rim light on the opposite side. So you typically have a key light on one angle, and then you have a rim on the other angle, so where the shadows are, so that way it doesn't look like the subject is blended into the background. For this page, I tend to use the rim lights as a artistic approach to help with this page, because this is supposed to be a dream sequence, and so I have her in this mystical realm where in the dream, she's glowing, and because she's a forest guardian, and we have a lot of neon greens, some purples, some blues, some pinks, so kind of blending with that spring type of color look. And I would add the rim lights to kind of help extinguish that that mythical fantasy type of feel. So I would use the rim lights for that type of approach, but typically you would use rim lights if you're trying to distinguish the subject from the background, so they don't look like they're in the same plane. All right, so we're getting into the nitty gritty with the details. I'm going crazy on the rendering of the skin, and again, it's a matter of preference. Not every artist has to be very detailed like I am. I'm just doing this for the sole purpose because it's a full page, and I wanted to bring this character to life. So I've been given the opportunity to go ahead and just go all out with the skin and the rendering. And as you can see in this page, there's a lot of different objects that's happening around. You got skin, you got jewelry, you got hair, and while they have very similar approaches, they all have different ways of detailing. So as you can see, like the earring versus the skin, you simply make your soft shapes and then you go into the harsher lights. With the jewelry, the shapes that I make for the jewelry is very obscure. Sometimes it's just a zigzag. I can't explain it, but and the reason why I do those zigzag patterns is when you look at jewelry, when you look at how light reflects on those type of earrings and piercings, light tends to be warped around the thing. So whereas you would just do a simple light, a soft brush around the the skin, light in the earrings tend to be very obscure, and they create these crazy looking shapes as they're being reflected. Because again, when you look from reference, it's being obscured. The reflectivity is much more different than how skin is. It's the same thing with hair. Hair, you have these chunks, you have these different kinky chunks of the hair, depending on whatever the hairstyle is. But a lot of times when they do the highlights, it's not always a flat, it's not like skin where you just create like an oval for the thing. You have to make these crazy shapes, these specific shapes for each of the objects, because you're trying to exemplify that this is hair, this is jewelry, this is skin, and they all take in different approaches to how light works. All those things tie into different art pieces. And again, I'm just describing this from experience, because when I first started out as a artist or colorist, I always thought that everything should be highlighted, everything should be spot on highlighted, just like I was. And as time goes by, as I've learned and improved upon my drawings, I realized there's a whole lot more to it than just coloring stuff. Skin does not reflect the same way as jewelry. Clothes does not reflect the same way as skin. Clothes in general does not have specular highlights like skin does, because it doesn't absorb the specularity. It doesn't absorb lights like how skin does. Skin has a lot of reflectivity going on in the pores, but clothes, it's just like one layer of highlights and that's it. You don't really have to go super bright on the clothes because it's not necessary, because it's not as reflective as like jewelry or skin. So like as you would see in the page, I just do these triangles in different shapes, and I stick with the like a neutral kind of like color. I don't go super bright on the clothes as I would do with skin or jewelry. And yeah, just like that, that's how my coloring process is. I just simply go over the different shapes with my Lasso tool, and then I use the Airbrush to kind of do like a nice little color, adding the colors in softly, and build upon the details. So and that's all it really is, because all you're really doing is that you're just breaking up the form. You're creating these planar faces for the body and for the skin and for the hair, for these type of surfaces, and try to build upon, because you're creating those surface details as you're continually building those shapes on top of each other, overlapping, and having those colors pop out. And and then on the left side I have some tool presets. So I have one where I have my brushes, so my air brushes, and I have my flies and my color. So you can try experimenting with these different tools and these different plugins. I change my blend shapes where I don't just use normal, but sometimes I use hard light if I want to make a color pop and a little more saturated. That would be hard light. Linear light, it's like basically hard light on steroids. So I encourage everybody to just kind of experiment with those type of properties. And again, it's not just Photoshop. You can do it in Clip Studio. You can do it in Sketchbook Pro. You can do it in GIMP. There's tons of different alternatives to doing your work. I just personally I use Photoshop because I've been using Photoshop since for all my life. So I'm so used to using it right now. I'm kind of switching between Clip Studio and Photoshop. Clip Studio has similar properties like Photoshop, if not better. If you're working on your comic books, which I'm working on right now, whatever software you use that has the Lasso and the Airbrush tool, you're welcome to try it. And this is the fun process, just going in, adding more detail. Just where you cue in the music and just enjoy going at it with them details. And I also forgot to mention, I want to send a shout out to some of my favorite artists that helped me over the years in my art career. And I'd like to send a special shout out to Mark Bagley, Marte Gracia, Muhammad Abadi, Alonso Espinoza, Joey Vasquez, Patrick Brown, Kyle Petrock, Steven Sanchez. Just so many people that I can't name from the top of my head. Let's make a challenge for all you guys in the chat. Let me know who is your favorite inspirational artist over the course of years. And while we're doing that, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. And to follow me as well on this page. We're going to be posting more tutorials, more tips and tricks. This is going to be a series for all the colorists out there, for all those that are just looking to improve. And all right, thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope you find this tutorial very useful. This has been a joy, and I'm absolutely in love with how the page came out. I cannot wait to show you guys how the book is in its entirety. We're planning to get this released very soon in the summer. Be on the lookout for Dark Journey issue 1 from Northern Wind Comics. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and until next time, I'll see y'all later.